The legendary folk singer and activist Pete Seeger died Monday at the age of 94. For nearly 7 decades, Pete Seeger was a musical and political icon who helped create the modern American folk music movement. In the 1940s, he performed in the Almanac Singers with Woody Guthrie. Then he formed the Weavers. In the 50s, he opposed Senator Joseph McCarthy's witch hunt and was almost jailed for refusing to answer questions before the House Un-American Activities Committee. Pete Seeger became a prominent civil rights activist and helped popularize the anthem, "We Shall Overcome." He was also a vocal critic of the Vietnam War and inspired a generation of protest singers. Later in his life, Pete was at the center of the environmental and anti-nuclear movements. With his wife, Toshi, Pete Seeger helped found Clearwater, a group to clean up the Hudson River. Toshi Seeger died last year, just weeks before their 70th wedding anniversary. In 2009, Pete and Bruce Springsteen performed Woody Guthrie's "This Land Is Your Land" on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial at an inaugural concert for Barack Obama when he first became president. Pete Seeger last joined us on Democracy Now! Just 4 months ago. We'll play highlights from that interview later, but first I want to turn to Pete Seeger in 2004, when he joined us in our Firehouse studio. I asked him about his parents and their philosophy of raising him.
Well, my father said, let Peter enjoy himself. We'll see what happens. And I think he was curious because he knew I liked music. My mother just left instruments all around the house. So I could bang on a piano or an organ or a marimba, on a squeeze box or a penny whistle or an auto harp. And at age 7, I was given a ukulele. And I've been into fretted instruments since then. In prep school, I joined the jazz band. And then a few years later, my father took me to a square dance festival in the southern mountains, and I suddenly realized there was a wealth of music in my country that you never heard on the radio. Old-time music, my brother calls it, I think a better name than folk music, all over the place. Depending where you are, you hear different kinds of old-time music. And I still feel that I'd like to see people not forget the old songs at the same time they're making up new songs.
Do you remember any of the songs that you heard then?
Oh, good gosh.
You'd like to play now?
I can't play them. My fingers are froze up, and my voice, you hear, I can't really sing anymore. What I do these days, I get the audience singing with me. If I'm singing for children, I'm needless to say, said, kids, you all know this song. If you don't, you will in a minute. She'll be coming round the mountain when she comes, toot, toot. And say, can't you get the toot, toot, toot? Well, pretty soon they're all doing, she'll be coming round the mountain when she comes, toot, toot. And the last verse, it's cumulative, so you repeat all the previous things. She'll be wearing red pajamas when she comes, scratch, scratch. She'll be wearing red pajamas when she comes, scratch, scratch. Wearing red pajamas, she'll be wearing red pajamas. She'll be wearing red pajamas when she comes, scratch, scratch. Yum, yum. Hi, babe. Whoa, back. Toot, toot. And even if the kids never heard the song before, they're doing it with me.
Pete, you traveled the South with Alan Lomax, and to a lot of people that may not be a familiar name.
Alan Lomax was the son of a Texas fella who collected cowboy songs 100 years ago. And that's how we know Home on the Range and other songs like it, Whoopie-Tie-Yi-Yo. And in 1908, he got President Roosevelt, Theodore Roosevelt, to write a short foreword for his book of cowboy songs. 30 years later, he had a son, and Alan was only 22 years old. His father got him installed as the curator of the Archive of American Folk Song in the Library of Congress. And Alan, in a few years, did what most people would take a lifetime to do. With utmost self-confidence, he calls up the head of Columbia Radio and says, you have a school of the air. Why don't you spend 1 year learning about American folk music? And the Columbia Symphony can play the music after you've heard some old person croak out the old ballad. And if he couldn't find an old person to do it, he got young me, age 19 and 20. And I still sing some of the songs I learned then. 'Tis advertised in Boston, New York, and Buffalo, 500 brave Americans a-whaling for to go, singing, blow ye winds of the morning, blow ye winds, hi-ho, clear away your running gear, and blow, blow, blow. He interviewed the woman who collected that song when she was a teenager, sailing on her father's whaling ship in the 19th century. Now, as an old woman, she came out with a beautiful book, Songs of American Sailormen. Joanna Colcord was her name. So he interviews her, has me sing a song, and then the symphony orchestra plays it. Well, Alan got me started and many others. He's the man who told Woody Guthrie, says, Woody Guthrie, your mission in life is to write songs. Don't let anything distract you. You're like the people who wrote the ballads of Robin Hood and the ballad of Jesse James. You keep writing ballads as long as you can. And Woody took it to heart. He wasn't a good husband. He was always running off. But he wrote songs, as you know.
Do you remember when you first met Woody Guthrie?
Oh, yeah. I'll never forget it. It was a benefit concert for California agricultural workers on Broadway at midnight. Burl Ives was there, the Golden Gate Quartet, Josh White, Leadbelly, Margot Mayo's square dance group with my wife dancing in it. I sang one song very amateurishly and retired in confusion to a smattering of polite applause. But Woody took over and for 20 minutes entranced everybody, not just with singing, but storytelling. I come from Oklahoma, you know. It's a rich state. You want some oil? Go down the ground. Get you some coal. Get you some oil. If you want lead, we got lead in Oklahoma. Go down in a hole and get you some lead. If you want coal, we got coal in Oklahoma. Go down the hole, get you some coal. If you want food, clothes, or groceries, just go in the hole and stay there. Then he'd sing a song.
When did you form the Weavers?
That was after World War II. Lee Hayes from Arkansas and his roommate Millard Lampell and I had started a group called the Almanacs, and I wrote to Woody, said, Woody, we're singing for unions all around. Come on, join us. We're in Madison Square Garden singing for striking transport workers. And so Woody, once again, deserted his wife, came and joined us. But Woody used to say, the Almanac's the only group I know that rehearse on stage. We were very badly organized. And after World War II, Lee says, Pete, do you think we could start a group that would actually rehearse? And we were fortunate to run into one of the world's greatest singers, Ronnie Gilbert. She was in her early 20s, beautiful alto voice, and a strong alto voice. I'd have to be 2 inches from the microphone. She could be 2 feet from the microphone, and she'd drown me out. She stood up to 3 strong-voiced men, and the 4 of us, however, were about to break up when we did the unthinkable. We got a job in a nightclub. Well, little Greenwich Village place, it's still down there, the Village Vanguard, and the owner paid us he didn't want me first. He said, I can't pay for a quartet. I'll pay for you. I'll pay you $200 like I did 2 years ago. I said, well, what if all 4 of us were willing to come for $200? That was low pay even then. And he had laughed. He said, well, if you're willing. And we got $200 and free hamburgers until a month later he came and saw the size of the hamburgers I was making. He said, let's make that $250, but no more free hamburgers. And we stayed there 6 months. Near the end of it, we met an extraordinary band leader, Gordon Jenkins, who loved our music and got us signed up with Decca. And we had a record called and on the other side, the B-side, was a record, Irene, Good Night, which sprang to #1 and for 3 months stayed up there in the top of the hit parade. It was the biggest seller since World War II. And
can you talk more about Irene?
Well, it was the theme song of the great black singer Leadbelly. He died in '49, and if he'd only lived another 6 months, he would have seen his song all over America. It was an old song. He simply changed and adapted it, added some verses and changed the melody. What my father called the folk process, which happens all through all kinds of music. In fact, all culture, you might say. Lawyers adapt old laws to suit new citizens. Cooks adapt old recipes to fit new stomachs. Anyway, I learned this 12-string guitar from Lead Belly. A high string and a low string together, but played together, give a new tone. And the song I really like to sing to you is always have to do with it. I don't sing it anymore. I give the words to the audience and they sing it. I says, you know this song. To everything turn, turn, turn. There was a season. Sing it. And the whole audience sing, turn, turn, turn. There is a season. And a time for every purpose under heaven. Time to be born, a time to die. Sing it. A time to be born, a time to plant, to reap, a time to plant, a time to kill, to heal, a time to kill, a time to laugh, to weep, a time to laugh, a time to... You know, those words are 2,256 years old. I didn't know that at the time, but Julius Lester, an old friend of mine, he's I don't know if you know him, he's a black man who is officially a Jew. Now, he became fascinated with the Bible, and I asked him, when was these words written? He says, well, the man's name was Koheleth, meaning convoker. Somebody who calls people together to speak to them. In the Greek translation, they called him Ecclesiastes, and they still, in the King James Version, this is it. And it's a type of poetry which is Greek. The Greeks have a word for it, anaphora, A-N-A-P-H-O-R-A, and it means you start off a line with a word or a phrase. You don't have rhyme at the end of the line, but you do have it becomes poetry by the way it's organized. Well, I didn't realize I liked the words, but I realize now those are maybe some of the most fundamentally important words that anybody could learn. You see, you and I, we're all descended from killers, good killers. The ones who were not good killers didn't have descendants, but we're descended from good killers. For millions of years, our ancestors were good killers. They say, if they hadn't been, we wouldn't be here today. Now is a new period. In other words, there was a time, you might say, the human race needed to have good killers. Now, if we don't change our way of thinking, there will be no human race here. Because science acts very irresponsibly. Oh, any information is good. Ha, ha, ha. They don't realize that some information is very important, some, frankly, forget about until we solve some other problems. Einstein was the first person who said it. Everything has changed now except our way of thinking. And we've got to find ways to change our way of thinking. Sports can do it, arts can do it, cooking can do it, all sorts of good works can do it, smiles can do it. And I'm of the opinion now that if the human race makes it, I say we've got a 50-50 chance. If the human race makes it, it'll be women working with children. Now, these are two very large oppressed classes in the human race. Children doing what the grown-ups say they're supposed to do, and yet they're going to have to pay for our mistakes. They're going to have to clean up the environment which has been filled with chemicals, the air being filled with chemicals, the water being filled with chemicals, the ocean being filled with chemicals, and they're going to have to clean it up. And I think it'll be women working with kids that'll do this job in millions of little ways, maybe done in your hometown. In my hometown, we're starting a project to put in a floating swimming pool in the Hudson, because now the Hudson is clean enough to swim in. Let's swim in it. And if it works in our little town, maybe other towns will do it. In fact, if there's swimming pool out, it's like a big netting in the water. So I confess I'm more optimistic now than I was 58 years ago, 59 years ago when the atom bomb was dropped.
That's Pete Seeger in our Firehouse studio with our Telltale radio headphones in 2004. The legendary folk singer and activist died Monday at the age of 94. We'll go back to our interview with him in a minute.